Hi to everyone and welcome to this AMETEK Land Incorporated webinar. Okay, right now to get this webinar started, here's your AMETEK Land Global Product Manager, Richard Gagg. Richard, go right ahead.
Good day, everyone. My name is Richard Gagg. I'm with AMETEK Land in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'd like to start by thanking everyone for attending today's presentation. Today I'm going to talk about the Land SpotAlEQS pyrometer and its accessories, which are designed for aluminium extruders. SpotAlEQS is Land's next generation of infrared pyrometers, specifically made for aluminium applications. It's very simple to use, it's very full-featured, and it's highly accurate. The AlEQS combines precision optics, sensitive detectors, and advanced high-speed digital processing capabilities. This combination of features allows AlEQS to perform with significantly improved accuracy and speed in more varied situations compared with older pyrometers. Here's an overview of a typical extrusion process. To the lower right, we see the billet reheat furnace. Billets exit this furnace after coming up to temperature and are then transferred over to the press. Once loaded into the press closes and the ram pushes the billet through the chosen die to produce the extrusion. Temperatures are very critical for both the billet, the extrusion as it exits the die, and also the extrusion at the end of the quench section. AlEQS is designed for two extruder applications. At the extrusion press exit, you simply select application 1, which is E mode for extrusion, and the pyrometer automatically calculates the correct settings for the alloy being measured. This setting is also used when the AlEQS is being used for billet cut face and billet side temperature measurements. The second mode is Q mode. If you're using AlEQS at the exit of the quench section, you select Q mode, and again the pyrometer automatically calculates the correct settings for the alloy being measured. If you encounter an uncommon alloy, then AlEQS can be taught to accommodate it. You simply enter a reference temperature taken by a thermocouple measuring the same point that the AlEQS is viewing. And then you can either enter that thermocouple reading, or you can place an offset in the offset window in plus and minus degree increments. Here we see a SpotAlEQS mounted above the extrusion, which is just exiting the die. It's mounted here on a simple L bracket, and one can see down on the extrusion there is a green spot, which is a targeting spot, and we'll speak about that in a little while. SpotAlEQS has been designed to survive in higher than normal ambient temperatures, so up to 155 Fahrenheit or 68 Celsius, before any cooling is necessary on the pyrometer. Spot's also very durable. It's sealed to NEMA 4 IP65, and the viewing window on the front of the Spot pyrometer is sapphire, so it's almost impossible to scratch. Only another sapphire or a diamond will scratch it. So it's very easy to clean the window. You don't have to take any special precautions. AlEQS improves on previous model pyrometers in a lot of ways. Firstly, The signal processing takes place in the pyrometer. There's no separate processor box needed. And the computations that are necessary for working with these varieties of alloys are continuously and rapidly performed. Inside the SpotAlEQS is a very high-speed digital processor and a very high speed of response detector, which makes this possible. So, why SpotAlEQS for an extruder? Well, first of all, the settings are really easy on this. You just have to select E or Q mode depending on where you're going to use the pyrometer. It has very precise mirror optics, and it has a very durable sapphire protection window. It works in very high ambient temperatures before you need to cool it. It has lots of different outputs: 4 to 20 milliamps, 0 to 20 milliamps, alarm contact outputs, Ethernet output, and also an emissivity value output. The focus on SpotAlEQS is fully adjustable between 300 millimeters to infinity. It has integrated through the lens digital camera, and it has a patented pulsed bright green LED focus pattern. That pattern appears when the instrument is focused, and it defines the target spot and location exactly. The key panel on the rear of the pyrometer and also the digital display allows just one person to install and set up the pyrometer. There's no need for somebody with a radio calling back to a control pulpit and saying, is it reading, what's it reading, etc. Just one man can do everything there at the pyrometer. SpotAlEQS also includes an integrated web server. And by using this web server, you can connect to the Spot pyrometer using a standard web browser, and you can adjust settings and focus. You can view the target alignment remotely, and you can use any web browser. Modbus TCP connectivity is included and allows for direct integration with digital control systems. So let's look a little at the integrated web server. What we see down here to the bottom right is a screen view of a Firefox web browser, and simply someone has entered the IP address of the Spot thermometer into the URL field. They put in 10.1.10.50, and as soon as it connects, up pops this view of the pyrometer with virtual buttons and the display all in the same positions that they are on the real pyrometer. Now, there's no special setup software because all you need is a standard web browser. You don't need a special setup cable. So, for instance, if you were reconfiguring something after a few months, you wouldn't be looking for a piece of setup software or a special cable. You just use a standard Ethernet cable and a standard web browser. Here's a view of the back of a SpotAlEQS, and let's familiarize you with this. There are 3 buttons, an enter button and an up and down button. These allow you to navigate through different menus. You can see in this particular view is the camera view. You'll see the temperature of the item being measured at the bottom. And in this particular case, the targeting green LED has been activated, and you can also see that in the camera view. You can view this camera view also through the web browser, and in the web browser it's a still image which updates about every 20 seconds. So this makes the setup very easy. It can be set up either locally or remotely using a web browser. So let's talk about the targeting capabilities of the SpotAlEQS. I mentioned before that it has motorized adjustable focus, and you can adjust that focus either locally using the buttons or remotely. You can enter an exact focus distance, and you can also enter a flash frequency for the pulse pattern. Sometimes a faster frequency is easier to see on a product than a slower frequency, and vice versa. The LED is just that, an LED. It is not a laser, and so there are no laser safety issues associated with this bright green LED target. The next thing we see in this pattern appears when the focus is achieved. And so if you are short focused or far focused, you just see a green blob. But when you achieve focus, this pattern appears. The radial arms bring your eye towards the center, and in the center is a very small spot which defines the exact area and location that's being measured by the pyrometer. Now, in the image to the right, we see a photograph of this targeting spot on an extrusion as it is exiting the die. This is not a photoshopped image. This is a real image of that. Very viewable, very easy to see where the pyrometer is looking and measuring. Because all of the processing is digital, we have the ability to integrate many different languages. And so this allows you to operate the SpotAlEQS in your local language. You don't need somebody trying to translate English. So I think we currently have 13 language choices within Spot, and we are adding them on a regular basis. So very easy to use. If you're a machine maker and you then export your machine with Spot pyrometers installed, they can be simply set up in the language that is local to the end user customer. Apart from using a simple web browser, we also offer Spot Viewer software, which is a free download. And Spot Viewer software can operate with one Spot pyrometer. It can give you a display and the ability to check the alignment, also to make setting changes. It can also data log, and that data logging can be based on events like contacts or alarms. This is a free application that's downloadable from the Land website. There's an additional cost application if you are using multiple Spot pyrometers. This is called Spot Server, and Spot Server can work real time with up to 40 Spot pyrometers connected. Here we see a Spot Server software screen. In this particular example, there are 20 Spot pyrometers which are displayed. Spot Server software also fully supports Windows multiple monitor choices. And so if you have Windows running on a PC and you have multiple monitors, you could have 20 pyrometers on one monitor, 20 pyrometers on another monitor, showing 40 in all. You can select as many as 40 and as few as 1. So it's very flexible. Again, lots of data logging features within here, and also features that enable you to adjust the spot thermometer if necessary. So for extruders, SpotAlEQS provides you with two application modes. The E mode is for the extrusion press exit, the die exit, and the Q mode is for the quench exit position. SpotAlEQS has very high-speed digital signal processing integrated inside the pyrometer. It has very tight mirror optics, very precise mirror optics, which focus all wavelengths at the same location and spot size. And the fully adjustable focus makes it for an optimal small target size at whatever distance you are using. Now, because SpotAlEQS can be selectable into which application thermometer it is, if you want to keep a spare, you only need one spare. So if you wanted a spare for the press exit and one for the quench exit, you just need one SpotAlEQS. You then simply set it into E mode or Q mode when you bring it out to use it. The other thing is that because it has adjustable focus, and if the extrusion press exit mounting position was at a different focus position than at the quench exit, you can simply adjust the focus to suit the application that you're putting the thermometer into. As I had mentioned previously, SpotAlEQS has a very fast response speed. It's less than 15 milliseconds. This is a class-leading response speed for this type of measurement. Standard within the Spot thermometer are multiple digital and analog outputs, and they're all included as standard. There are no options to buy here. You can power it either over the analog connection with 24 volts DC, or on the digital connection using power over Ethernet. Regardless of which way you power it, the digital and the analog outputs are powered by that method that you choose. So summing up on the SpotAlEQS pyrometer, it's very accurate straight out of the box. It's fully featured, and the modern design allows you to communicate digitally or analog, gives you video and remote connectivity, all in one simple pyrometer package. Now we've got an exciting development for use with all of the land Spot range of pyrometers, and this is an intelligent motorized actuator. You see it here in this image. This actuator is designed specifically for use with land Spot pyrometers. You attach it to the pyrometer either using the pyrometer's standard L bracket or the optional water-cooled mounting. This actuator facilitates the target alignment of the Spot pyrometer either locally or remotely, and in some cases automatically. If you're an extruder who makes many die changes, you'll like this because it's very simple and easy to realign the pyrometer accurately. Here we see the actuator attached to the water-cooled optional housing if you're working in very high, above 158 Fahrenheit conditions. Here we see both mountings. We see here an actuator attached with a standard L bracket to a Spot pyrometer, and in this case the Spot pyrometer has an optional air purge on the front of it in case you're in an environment that has lots of dust or oil droplets, things like this. In the second photograph we see another SpotAlEQS mounted on an actuator above a die exit in this particular case. This was a very large press and temperatures up here were above 150 Fahrenheit. In both cases, the air purge that land designs is tolerant of dirty air. The air projects forwards of the instrument lens. It never makes contact with the instrument lens, and so you do not need to supply expensive, critically clean air to act as an air purge. The actuator can swivel a Spot pyrometer through 90 angular degrees in 0.1 degree increments. So that's 900 steps. Swivel speed is adjustable, approximately 25 to 100 degrees per second. And the swivel angle is also adjustable, anywhere within the 90 degree swivel. The actuator also has an integrated web server in the same way that the SpotAlEQS pyrometer does. In this particular case, the actuator here is set to an IP address of 10.1.10.60. You'll note here also that you can set the subnet mask and a gateway. The gateway setting is very important if you want to communicate with Spot, or you want Spot to communicate to another network segment within the plant. There are two main settings within this screen for the mode of scanning. One is billet. If you set it into billet mode, then the actuator will swivel Spot along the length of a billet and allow a temperature profile to be produced from head to tail of the billet. This is very useful for customers with integrated control systems where the press speed is relative to the billet profile temperature. One can trigger this mode remotely via a voltage signal trigger, or you can send a message to this actuator using Modbus TCP protocol for it to start scanning and to report back the temperature, the scan position, and many other features can be accessed through the Modbus TCP addressing. There is an optional remote control for the actuator. So if you would like to manually drive the actuator, you can do so with this remote control. It can either be handheld or it can be bolted to the side of the machine. In this particular case, you can see that it's got forward and back arrows, and then the green spot pattern, if you press that, it actuates the bright green LED focusing pattern. And if you hold down that button for 3 seconds, it goes into billet mode and it will detect where a billet is and lock onto it. So in these 3 images, to the left, we see a schematic of a spot thermometer on an actuator with a purge looking down onto one of 2 extrusions exiting a die. Again, if you use this in billet mode, it can automatically detect the extrusion, seek it out and lock onto it. Here we see a spot pyrometer on a motorized actuator within the heavy-duty cooled mounting, which may be necessary if you're working at extremely high ambient temperatures. Here's an image of the targeting pattern on an extrusion as it's exiting the die. This is not a photoshopped image, this is a real image of that focus pattern. It's very visible because it pulses and also because it is bright green. If you set the actuator into billet profile mode, then the actuator will swivel the spot along the length of the billet, producing a head to tail temperature profile. So you can see here in this image, here's an actuator on the side of the press. There's a spot pyrometer attached to it. And here's the billet ready to be loaded into the press. And again, this is not Photoshop. This is actually where the Spot is viewing at this moment in time as it is scanning from head to tail along. You can see that bright green dot there on the side of the billet. So again, here's a view of the profile produced, and within the web browser view of this actuator, you can see that we also have a virtual remote control that you can manually drive from this screen if you don't have that keypad. The Spot actuator actually contains an integrated network switch, and so the IP address and the subnet mask and importantly a gateway are all user configurable. The actuator is normally controlled by messages over TCP, Modbus TCP. The actuator acts as a Modbus TCP slave or server, so the control system must be a Modbus TCP master. So some of the example commands sent to it would be scan and go, the start and the end positions that you want it to swivel through, the current position reporting back, the current temperature reporting back. Now, we understand that everybody does not use Modbus TCP, and so we offer the popular AnyBus gateway, which allows conversion of other Profibus, DeviceNet, Ethernet, IP, ControlNet, and other protocols to Modbus TCP. Here's an example of some of the registers, the Modbus registers that are available as either read or read-write. And for instance, there's an example here of billet scan mode, scan and go command, current position, the parameters current temperature. So many different registers that can be read from and some which are written to. In this photograph, we can see a PLC in the foreground, which is an Allen Bradley PLC in this particular case. And we used an AnyBus gateway to communicate with it from the Modbus TCP SpotAlEQS thermometer. In this particular case, the Allen Bradley was seeing inputs from both the spot parameter at the die exit and also another spot parameter mounted at the end of the quench. You can set the spot actuator into a detect mode, and in the detect mode, spot will swivel through the full 90 degrees. It will track temperatures throughout that full 90 degrees, remember them, and then it will come back and lock onto the highest energy source that it saw, which is the extrusion in this particular case. And it's particularly useful if people are doing regular die changes. It's also very useful at the quench exit if you have laterally moving sections where you can simply locate them and measure them. So in the hotspot mode, instead of billet mode, that actuator swivels and locates the extrusion. SpotAlEQS and the actuator both speak over Modbus TCP protocol, and they talk to each other in this mode and automatically locate and lock onto the extrusion without the need for computer commands or manual inputs. I mentioned earlier that SpotAlEQS has precision optics. The optical system is a mirror optical system, and this enables the different wavelengths that are used within the SpotAlEQS to all look at the same spot in the same location and the same size, because all wavelengths are reflected at the same angle by mirrors. If we were to use refractive optics, they would bend the different wavelengths at different angles. This is why we use precision mirror optics on this device. The combination of these focusable precision optics and the very fast 15 millisecond response speed allows us to locate very small objects with very high accuracy and produce very high quality temperature measurements. And so we see here, just to summarize, SpotAlEQS is used for extrusion die exits and quench exits. It's also used for profiling the temperature of the billet from head to tail. It can be matched with the intelligent actuator that can be driven either remotely from a digital control system or locally from a handset, or put into automatic mode where it is locating where an extrusion is and locking onto it. Okay, we've come to the end of today's presentation, and I'd like to thank everyone who's spent their valuable time attending. If you have any questions following this, please feel free to contact your local AMETEK land distributor or representative or regional sales manager.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much for that great presentation. Okay, Richard, let's take a look at those questions. Here's your first one. How do I set up the pyrometer for the press exit?
Well, you simply power up the Spot and select the E mode of operation. Then you select Fahrenheit or Celsius readings. You install it and point it at the extrusion as it exits the die and focus the lens. That's pretty much it.
And thanks very much for that answer. Let's take a look at the next question. What temperature range does the Spot have?
The Spot has a range of 200 to 700 Celsius or the Fahrenheit equivalent. If you're using the analog outputs, then you can scale the 4 and 20 milliamps to what you want within that 200 to 700 C range. So for instance, 4 milliamps could be 220 C and 20 milliamps could be 600 C if you need to match an existing indicator.
And thanks once again for that answer, Richard. Here's another question. Is the green target spot easy to see?
Oh yes, it's very bright and it's flashing, it's pulsing. You can't miss it. You can start it flashing with either a 24 volt DC signal from a switch, or you can start it using the web browser command, or you can start it with the optional remote control.
And once again, thank you very much. Here's your next question. Can you explain how the motor mount automatically finds the extruded profile?
Yes. The Spot pyrometer and the Spot actuator talk directly with each other. The actuator receives a start signal from either the optional handset or a 24 volt signal or a command from a digital controller. It then rapidly swivels through its 90-degree range while it's simultaneously matching the temperatures measured by the Spot at each of the 900 positions in that swivel. It then matches the highest reading with the position where that occurred, and it rapidly drives the Spot back to that position and locks in. This is helped because of the very tight optics on the Spot and also its 15 millisecond temperature response speed.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much. We've got time for another question. What type of maintenance does this pyrometer need?
Not a lot. Every other week you should check to see if the protective window is getting dirty, and if it is, just wipe the dirt off with a rag. You don't have to be that gentle because the window is sapphire. If it's mounted on a manual bracket, then just occasionally activate the LED to see that it's still aligned where it should be. All land spot pyrometers transmit their own ambient temperature, so it's very easy to see if the spot is working within its temperature limits. You can even associate an alarm with the ambient temperature as a warning.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much for all those answers, and it seems we're about out of time, so we're going to have to wrap up this webinar right there. Richard Gagg, thanks for sharing your expertise with all of us today.
This is Richard Gagg with AMETEK Land in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, signing off. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Take care and have yourselves a great day.